All right, here we are. You asked for it, people. You wanted to see this man, and he is here tonight with us. The one and only Renaissance man, William Brown. Hello, William.
Greetings, salutations, and excelsior.
I would expect no less a welcoming greeting from
Much
you.
obliged.
So already the comments are coming in. Buttermilk Jug says, thumbs up for Rich and Willie for taking us to Browntown tonight. TNL Nick says, I'm almost giddy and I don't do giddy. Reed Transistor asks, William Brown is your brother? Okay, let's straighten this out right now.
I was going to say, despite the fact that we share the same surname, and despite the fact that we both wear eyeglasses, we are of absolutely, positively no relation to each other.
Great. So that's all cleared up. And I'm from the Browns of Ireland. What's your heritage, William?
Pennsylvania Dutch.
Pennsylvania Dutch. Huh?
Although I was born and raised in Manhattan and still live here.
Do you like pretzels?
I've had them in my youth. Much prefer the old Mr. Salties of Nabisco.
Gotcha. Okay. So anyway, keep those comments going. We're going to get to some of your questions later. But I just want to set you up properly, William, for anyone, who's new to the show. But I'm sure you already are familiar with some of Mr. Brown's work. He appeared with us 6 times on Beyond Vaudeville.
Plus a cameo appearance at the April 1993 Caroline show on stage with Barbara Phil.
Wow. Okay, that too. So, and the shows you appeared on, you were with some of the stars, Chauncey Howell, Marvin Scott, Allison Steele, Ron Palillo, Kitty Carlisle Hart, and your last appearance with Kay Ballard and Lara Jill Miller, which was a little controversial, and we're going to get to that later in the program.
Oh, yes.
Yes. Okay.
I have a story to tell about that, and then some.
Now, we call William Brown the Renaissance Man because he does have many interests, TV test patterns, Benny Hill, record label errors, time temperature displays on buildings, many fascinating interests, and we're going to get into these tonight. But I thought, William, also, and I promise we're going to let you speak because we love to hear you speak. But I do want to share, again, just to set up for anyone that might not be as familiar with your work, some video of you doing one of your dances. And let's just play that now, and then we'll talk about this dance. Okay, William, that was phenomenal. How did you come up with that dance? How did you have the energy to do that? How did you do it in that small space? Tell us about that dance.
A million questions, that some of which are unanswerable, but I'll try anyway. That type of number was the type that you could imagine Jackie Gleason doing, the Away We Go style shuffle that he was famous for. And I thought it definitely opportunity to display my talents in that department. And also, as I look back on the appearance with that, seeing it, I may have also unwittingly provided a very useful public service insofar as it ended up getting ensuring that Joey would not get in trouble with David that week.
Ah, yes. So you kind of served as a block between the two of them.
A buffer, you may say.
Yes. Okay. So let's. You mentioned Gleason, and you're obviously a big Jackie Gleason fan. We've heard you talk about him, and you're a big Benny Hill fan.
Yes.
And, any updates in the world of Benny Hill that you can share?
Well, the one thing that I remain sad about to this day is the fact that even though all of his Thames TV shows from 1969 to 1989 have been put out on DVD, not only here in the United States, but also in Great Britain, to this day, a show he did in Australia in late 1977, which also aired in Britain in the spring of 1978, and which contents were scattered amongst all the syndicated half-hour shows that aired here in this country, that has not been put out in any configuration on DVD in its entirety to this day. I mean, parts of it were on part 3 of one of his VHS titles, but that was about it.
Now, one of the things I found interesting about your interest in Benny Hill was that you were able to identify many of the women who appeared on the.
Not only the women, but also a lot of the male co-stars as well. And one of the reasons I got into that was because there was an author named Vincent Terrace. I don't know if you've heard of him.
No,
but he wrote several books on TV, the history of all the TV shows. He had many errors in terms of identifying actors' names, more errors than one would see in an early 1962 New York Mets game. And I decided I was going to straighten everything out, check for myself, and so I went to various sessions at the Library of the Performing Arts at Lincoln Center, looking at old spotlights to get the skippy on who actually was on the show, and connect them to the names that were printed out in the ending credits.
Gotcha.
Was I able to correctly pinpoint them? And at one point, from the early 2000s until the guy who ran it semi-retired in the early 20-teens, was that I was a contributing editor to the website Benny's Place, which was originally devoted to the Hills Angels, the period of which is not so much my favorite, but it expanded more to the show itself, thanks to my input.
Gotcha. Okay. And now let's back up, William, and
back up. No, seriously.
When was it and how was it that we actually first met, you and I?
As I said, it was in April of 1992 at a copy center on the north side of East 13th Street between 5th and University Place. And you were going there to make Xeroxes of flyers for the upcoming Caroline show.
So at a copy shop, right?
That's pretty much not a coffee shop, but a copy shop.
Yes, and I think that might be interesting to some of our Beyond Vaudeville viewers, because this is where we often would find our talent, just in New York and on the streets and in copy shops and
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
and the strangest thing is like the story about Lana Turner being discovered at a Schwab's drugstore in Los Angeles.
Correct. Okay, and so as a result of being on Beyond Vaudeville, would people recognize you in New York?
Well, one person in particular recognized my appearances on the shows. He was a client of somebody who I knew for several years, dating back to high school, who ran an audio and video editing service.
Okay.
It was because of those 6 appearances that I was cast in a short feature film called Lefty Right. Where I played a guy who worked as a telemarketer for a newsletter of dubious value that provided names of workers who repaired the roads on the bridges and tunnels for the DOT.
And can this be found on YouTube?
There are 5 clips now.
Okay.
It says Scenes from Lefty Right, and the film is also mentioned on IMDb.
Okay, so you have a lot of fans, William, and there are a lot
of one of the connections is one of your guests on one of the other shows, the one which featured Ron Palillo, was Gilbert Weiss and Champ the Wonder Dog. Well, his son, an actor named Daniel Weiss, played my boss in the Lefty Right film.
Wow, just pure coincidence.
Well, coincidence and other things too. But
well, there are a lot of comments coming in. A lot of comments coming in, William, because you are just so popular, and I'll try to keep up with all of these. But let's see. Is it true Mr. Brown also operated some of the Beyond Vaudeville hand puppets? I don't think that.
How could I if I were up? If I were in front of the camera?
Yes, correct. And did Mr. Brown once anger Kitty Carlisle?
I don't know about that, but I do remember on one pre-prep for one of my appearances, Fran Lee, who was very famous, she was prepping to get on. She wanted to show a video clip of one of her appearances. And I told her, no mas, they won't permit it. She says, then she went over, and next thing you know, she was out in a huff. If she had taken more time, she'd have been out in a minute in a huff.
Fran Lee was a very early New York City public access star.
That's right.
Yes, and she would kind of yell, and yeah, she was a legend. So now you also do drawings, right? And
yes, that's right.
And you
one of my colored pencil too. They allow for more detail when doing drawings of people and things than pastels.
Gotcha. And here's one here. And what are we looking at here?
The Great Ones. This is
a
fictitious portrayal of Benny Hill making a guest appearance on the Jackie Gleason show in the last years of his run before the show was canceled in 1970.
And this is an original piece of art that you actually drew.
Yes.
Yeah.
Although that is from a photograph, but yes.
And how do you imagine the two of them would have gotten along, Benny Hill and Jackie?
I think Jackie Gleason would have eaten him alive, because Benny Hill's personality, from what I read in his biographies.
Oh, you don't mean literally would have eaten him alive.
No, you know what I'm getting at, because his personality behind the scenes and was more like his own, was more like Art Carney than Gleason. Although on his show, Benny Hill had a degree of creative control that was sort of similar to not only Gleason, but also Milton Berle in the early years of television.
Gotcha. Okay. And now you have a great knowledge of technology, and you were always very interested in the cameras that we were using on our shows in the studio.
First 5 shows I did were in a studio on East 23rd Street where there were Ikegami ITC 730 AP cameras. There was another studio across the hall which used one Sharp XCA1 camera. And the last show I did was at a studio on West 59th Street where Manhattan Neighborhood Network is now based, which used a CCD tube as opposed to tube camera called Ikegami HC340. Now, I have seen some Beyond Vaudeville's done a year or two before I first came on, where the picture looked absolutely terrible. I thought, where did they get those old, bulky RCA TK41 class cameras from? I then found out that they actually used Ikegami ITC 350s whose tubes were shot.
Aha.
I was looking at Sue Simmons. I said, why were they using old vintage cameras from the 1950s or 60s? Who knew that was younger than that? But of course, they performed like they were older.
Now, did you ever work professionally with cameras, or this is just one of your many passions?
Well, it's certainly one of my interests for sure. Mm-hmm. I've also appeared on some shows where the studio had on hand a Hitachi SK91 camera. And before that, they had a Sharp XC700.
Got it. Now, so William, let's fast forward to your episode with Kay Ballard. And
yeah, that's one of the questions I asked, trying to be hard hitting.
So,
which
what we'll do?
Now you said that I had gotten off on the wrong foot. Now that was putting it kindly, because the entire show I did with two left feet.
Well, let's take a look.
Anyway, it was like that routine in Benny Hill where someone means to say he was bent on seeing her, and instead it comes out as the size of her doubled him up. Well, that was my size of her doubled him up moment.
Well, let's take a look. We're going to look at some clips from this show. So it's Kay Ballard, a legendary performer, performed with Spike Jones, and then eventually was on the Mothers-in-Law popular show. And Larry Jill Miller from Give Me a Break was on. And let's just watch a little of this, and then we'll talk about this experience. Okay, here we go.
Okay, and do you play yourself, or you?
I play a very mean lady at the DMV.
Oh. very mean.
Well, I couldn't see you playing a mean person.
Oh, yes.
Oh.
Oh, yes,
Well,
I can be
actually,
very
I've
mean.
seen, I've heard of employees of the DMV of that kind of temperament who looked, in terms of your weight class at this time.
Oh.
Vicious little person. I told you
I-
I can be mean.
Yes, that's okay, Mr.
I rest
Brown.
my case.
Now, hi, Ms. Miller.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Same here.
You have all these posters. Where's the Give Me a Break poster?
Oh, I couldn't find one,
Yeah,
actually.
I remember that show.
Okay.
And Nell Carter
Yeah.
and one actor who died.
Dolph Sweet.
Dolph Sweet.
Right.
Aren't you
In the
going to
fourth
say
year.
anything about her weight? You said it about mine.
Oh, boy.
Oh, boy.
Okay. You see, Mr. Brown, you started things off on the wrong foot, I think, today.
I find you to be pretty disgusting. Even though you're sort of trusting. Get sort of flabby. If you hang out with a tabby, you'll never be an over the hill. If you stay with George's gorilla, nothing ever was as dreadful. I find this to be very regretful. You've proved to be such a killer. 'Cause you're not with George's gorilla. What have I done to make you see? What a fool I've turned out to be! I'll have some tea with the killer! Will you hang out with George and Gorilla?
If I'm not mistaken, weren't you also in New Faces of 1952?
No, I was not.
Oh,
You're
because I
thinking
heard-
of Alice Ghostly.
Oh, well, I did read something that you were in one New Faces review, but
Never.
That
Okay, well,
we're thus straightened out.
well, she would know, Mr. Brown.
Yes.
She would. She was there at the time.
Well, we have a lot to
The
go
last
over. Here.
part I had been mistaken, and the reason why is a story in and of itself. Because what I'd gotten wrong was what Miss Ballard herself did back in 1952. What happened was she and 5 other young up-and-coming musical comedy actors and nightclub performers, only one of whom besides her made it nationally big elsewhere, a chap named Jack Cassidy.
Okay.
And they were assembled by Goddard Leibus, one of the legendary record producers who helmed all those Broadway shows on Columbia.
Okay.
Well, they were assembled to perform a bunch of songs from the old Jerome Kern musical Roberta, which, and this was in the wake of, this was commissioned in the wake of the release of the film Lovely to Look At, which also contained songs from Roberta. And in fact, the album's title was called Jerome Kern's Roberta Lovely to Look At.
Got it.
And it was also, here's another thing, because I was also working at the time on a discography of singles issued by Columbia Records, which it was also released in that format.
So
And
you
this-
had this. you had this album and you were thinking in your mind that she was in New Faces of 1952, was it?
Well,
And-
you'll see, well, one
Yeah.
reason was because right in the line of notes on the back cover, it said, quote, Kay Ballard making her record debut.
Aha. Okay.
So that was what threw me off. That one of several things that threw me off.
So that's clarified.
The
and
other
it
thing was
she
too,
was
the
correct.
reason I got the album had to do with a production error on one of the sides of my copy, which was pressed in styrene rather than on vinyl.
Aha.
And as you can see here, this is the center label was die cut so far off the center in terms of the design that you could actually see portions of the bleed from the top on top from the other label on top of it.
So your interest in records, and we'll get back to Miss Ballard, but your interest in vinyl and records is really about label mishaps.
Label information, the technical stuff.
Okay.
Uh,
So if you go to a record store, you're not necessarily looking for you're looking specifically for.
Although I do have some of the biggest hits, you know, but even so, they have a story in and of themselves in terms of where pressed, what typefaces were used, and all that. Who cut the lacquers, where they were cut, what type of lathes they were cut on.
Right. Got it. Okay. So let's back up now with Miss Ballard. So you got things off to a bad
The
start.
shaky start. As I said, I was on two. I had two left feet the whole time, and it also affected George's gorilla. If you noticed, I was looking as when they started the next cue for the next verse. I was unable, because of this error in terms of the way it started, to bring about the last two lines of the first verse, which were, "One could never be such a filler."
Oh,
on a
I'm
day
sorry,
with-
Mr. Brown. Could we hear you actually sing it?
Yeah, one can never be such a filler on a day with George's gorilla. Now you you hear that, and then you imagine how it could have been done and how it was done, and you can see how it was messed up and all that. In other words, whatever could go wrong on my final appearance did.
Gotcha. Now, are you still able to do that high pitch that you were able to do at the end of that song?
I don't think not sort of cracks a little bit there, but that's higher than even Barry Gibb was able to do.
Yes, I wonder what what that was
Well,
reaching.
there was no trickery involved in that either.
Wow, amazing.
What was played on the TV was what actually people heard in the studio at the time.
Got it. So some of the other things that I know you're interested in, you talk about time and temperature displays. This was something
yes.
we never covered before, but when you see buildings with time and temperature displays.
Well, there were different manufacturers of them, and each of them made them in different ways, and the numbers were shaped differently. One of my favorites were from a company called Time-O-Matic, based in Danville, Illinois, which is now known as Watchfire Signs LLC. They had several numeral styles, which they had, and they provided the technology that was fused together to make the first time and temperature display in one unit that was marketed by a company out in Spokane, Washington, called American Sign and Indicator. In
Okay.
1951, the First National Bank in Spokane, or is it in Seattle? I'll have to check. And there was those two. There was a company that went by several different names: All American Scoreboards, Spencer Display Corporation, and General Indicator Corporation. They made the clock that was seen on both the outside and the inside of the original Yankee Stadium up until 1973, when it was gutted for rebuilding.
Wow.
And it was also used inside the original Penn Station before it was demolished in the mid-60s.
Well, this is very informative to anyone watching, because we never covered that topic on Beyond Vaudeville, and
Well, that was because I never got into it until a couple of years ago.
Ah, okay. Now, one topic that you were into and you mentioned in passing, but we didn't get to really explore, is your interest in TV test patterns.
Yes, because on the show with Allison Steele and all that, She assumed because I did not listen to her show that I was a lark, and in her world, the world was divided amongst larks and owls.
Ah,
Well, in those days, my radio listening was not conducive to listening to her show. For example, now this is where this was during the time she was at WNEW-FM.
okay.
There were sometimes when I was trying to get to bed to go to school the next day, and my radio was on WMCA 570, and the time that I was listening, Long John Neville and Candy Jones were on.
Got it. Okay. And
That's
so
just
now,
one. Or another time, I would be listening to 1010 Wins on the overnight when they played loops of the hour's newscasts, and every hour it becomes more and more obvious that the timestamp was inserted in.
so how
And
many
the time tone became more and more wow and fluttery.
how many TV test patterns have you collected over the years?
Selected, or rather redrew from original sources. There were several different test patterns. There was one that NBC used from the 1940s onwards that was developed by a chap named Peter G. House. Then there was the CBS test pattern, which was here used by Channel 2 in New York.
Now, you said you recreated them. That's something that you actually drew?
Recreated from original sources, even down to the typeface used for the call letters.
Wow. And how many of these have you done?
Several. If you go to a Flickr and type into the Google search engine WSBK test pattern, that was a Boston TV station, and then you'll see as you go along.
So let's see some others. And is there a big community of people that are interested in these TV test patterns?
Well, they're mostly involved in British test cards like BBC Test Card F, but these are what Americans. Now, this was used by NBC stations, some NBC stations from the mid-1960s up until the early to mid-70s. Here, this was used by WNBC TV from about, in this form, from about 1964 up until 1975.
Now, have you done any with, sometimes you'll see like a Native American head on them?
Well, all of these were alternatives to the Indian head.
Got it.
Because even then there were some that didn't think it apropos, so they used other alternatives to it.
Got it. Okay.
This was from the mid-1960s, used by Channel 7 here, WABC TV.
Got it. Okay.
This here was used by WOR TV Channel 9 from its silent in 1949 up until the mid-60s.
Well, I'm sure,
This
everyone.
was the WPIX test pattern that was first used in 49 and used up until the mid to late 70s.
Well, I'm sure
Very
everyone
iconic
watching,
test pattern.
I'm sure everyone watching, William, would love to see, your entire collection. But there are
I
some.
just did a sample, just showing a little sample here. It would bore you all to tears if I showed them everything.
Well, let me see what other questions we have here, and I can.
All right, fine.
Somebody asks, can I hire Mr. Brown to just talk to me when I'm on long trips?
Sorry, I'm bound by home. I take care of an elderly mother who last year was in and out of the hospital a couple of times. And on one of them, she was in a bed next to a hipster who was in such racking pain that he had recently undergone square replacement surgery.
Square. You need a drum and cymbal for that.
Well, let's just say the spirit of one of your guests is looming large over me tonight.
I'm trying to get to other questions. Let me see. Let's see. What is a lot of great comments about you, how much everyone loves you. I'm just trying to find some.
I'm glad to hear that there's some love around this world.
Yes. Why during the Beyond Vaudeville appearances was Mr. Brown always admiring himself on camera?
Well, if I don't, who will?
Is there a reason you were looking at the monitors, or?
Well, there was an old superstition, that sometimes a monitor, when it shows the action, does not match what's going on live, and I wanted to make sure that they all hew to the same wavelength.
Gotcha. Okay. Mr. Brown, who's your favorite, Keenan Wynn or Ivory Wayans?
I would say it's a toss-up.
Okay, toss up. Gotcha. Did Mr. Brown ever have or avail himself of any Beyond Vaudeville groupies?
No, I basically keep to myself.
Mr. Brown has always had a great fashion sense. Does he still wear suits regularly?
Only when I'm doing TV appearances.
Ah, okay, got it. And tell us about, you also did some work in tracking down the composer of the 4:30 movie on
I was one of
WABC.
several different people to do that,
Okay. Oh, several people were involved.
including the son of longtime WABC TV announcer Scott Vincent, and a couple of other people. And it was written by a chap named Walter Raymond, whose name you may have heard of.
I
And
have.
it was an 18 to 20-second piece commissioned by the ABC network itself for its local stations.
Okay.
It was originally called the Big Show thing because that was what the movie show itself was called before it was rechristened the 4:30 movie around January of 1969.
Okay. And someone's asking, what is your favorite episode of The Honeymooners? That's from Jesse Herman.
There are quite a couple of them. There's Better Living Through TV, the one with the Chef of the Future. There was the $99,000 Answer, whose original air date fell on the same day Elvis Presley made his first appearance on Stage Show, which led into it at the time.
Aha. Okay.
Yeah.
And I remember the episode with the Hucklebuck.
Oh, yeah, Young and Hot. Somebody thought that was a version by K Star. And that reminds me, the episode Mama Loves Mambo, there actually was a record called Claves for Mambo by Tito Rodriguez. You could see it on Discogs. It was recently released on RCA Victor.
I
That's
gotcha.
the other thing, too, I should have known. I know the Roberta album was on Columbia. The New Faces of 1952 original cast album was on RCA Victor. And even though Kay Ballard, Jack Cassidy, Joan Roberts, Stephen Douglas, Portia Nelson, and Frank Rogier may not have been in the Leonard Silman New Faces productions, in terms of their status at the time they took part in that Roberta project, they in a sense were New Faces.
True. That's been made very clear tonight.
Nice.
So I think, William, the questions are going to keep coming because you're a fascinating guy and you have so many interests. And
there's one thing I could never be accused of, it's being dull.
No, you have lots of expertise, and it's always interesting to hear what you have to say. And I think we'll have to do this again sometime and address yet more of your interests.
But here's
a
preview of one of them. This was another drawing I did with colored pencil and a lot of detail.
Okay.
This was envisioning, because of the fact that Jackie Gleason was the main squeeze in Miami 2 decades before Miami Vice went on the air. Well, here we have Brooklyn Vice.
Okay, hold that up close so we can see it. And let's So that's Jackie Gleason.
Yes.
And is that Art Carney?
Yes, that is Art Carney with him, and as you can tell, he is standing on a sewer cover.
He sings the song of the sewer.
Oh yes, always.
Yes. So, and that's another original drawing. It's really
yes, it
amazing.
was, and it took 3 months to do the bridge, which, by the way, I took Polaroids of the Brooklyn Bridge and fused them together like this, and 1 month for the rest of the drawing.
Well, William, hopefully you'll put that on a T-shirt so we can all buy that. So I want to thank you so much for joining us tonight.
At least we cleared the air.
Mr. Brown, yes. And I want to thank everyone for participating in the chat. Everyone's great. I hope you were all happy to see William Brown. If you did enjoy this, please subscribe if you haven't already to the Beyond Vaudeville YouTube channel, so you're up to date on all our stuff and all the latest videos. And like William, and William will hopefully have you back again here, and wish you all the best.
Peace,
and continued
love, and understanding.
Sounds good. Thank you. Thanks, everybody.